Well, welcome back to OSD, Obsessive Sneaker Disorder. D. Wells in the house. We're going to be joined by our other co-host, Sean Paper Chaser Williams, soon. But man, we have a great show in store for you. You're going to love this one. We're going to want you to like and subscribe, but of course, post your comments about the show. So we're going to talk sneakers, the culture, retail, tariffs, and then some. But more importantly, our guest of honor, the man with the plan, and maybe 50 grand. That's a little hip hop for y'all to remember. Matt Priest, welcome to the show. It's so good to see you. Happy New Year.
D, thank you so much. I've been wanting, I didn't think I was cool enough to be on OSD. I run a little podcast that, is totally kind of drafting on the trail that you guys have blazed called Shoe and Show. And I was like, I wonder if someday I can get up and be with the big boys and big girls at OSD. And here I am. So I've made it, my friend. I'm here. Absolutely. And I'm so excited.
Absolutely. So good to have you on the show. Matt, you're in a not a precarious position, but you wear so many different hats.
Yeah.
I mean, I see you. I love when I turn on the TV and I'm watching CNBC or CNN or one of these news shows. And I'm like, oh, I know him.
Right.
And then at the same time, we've hung out at, be it shoe events, the Black Footwear Forum. I mean, your role as president and CEO of FDRA, like, just give people an overview of what does that even entail, and how did you get into that role? How did that begin?
Yeah, so great question. We're an organization that's been around 81 years, D, and we represent 95% of the industry. And I'm only the third chief executive in 81 years. So once you get this job, it's like Hotel California, you never check out, right? And so I'm a lobbyist. I'm one of those evil lobbyists that people know about. I am a policy guy. I cut my teeth in the policy space on Capitol Hill. I worked at the Commerce Department on shoe and apparel and textile trade policy. And then in February of 2009, I got this job. And we are a chamber of commerce for the footwear industry. We are making our companies more competitive. We're helping them protect their IP. We're helping them try to lower tariffs, which we'll get to. We're helping them to understand retail and e-commerce and chemical safety and labor regulations. I mean, you name it, we got our hands dirty in it. And it's footwear, sneakers. I mean, I love sneakers. I love shoes. And so it was like a match made in heaven for me. I don't know how FDRA feels about it, but I'm feeling great. And I'm loving the gig that the industry has afforded me.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk sneakers for a little bit. Like, when you talk about your history, with footwear, I know you're a sneakerhead, but like, where did it begin for you? What was that like entry point? What was that pair of sneakers that you kind of latched onto and observed?
Yeah, so there's some pictures of me when I was like 5 or 6 where I'm rocking Cortezes. I'm in 47, 48 this year. But it really the moment in history when I look back and I was really into sneakers was in 1989. My father was in the Marine Corps for 27 years. Shout out to all you Marines, Semper Fi. And we were transferred up to the D.C. area the summer I turned 12. And so my father was the one I always asked to help me buy shoes. And so he picked up, for our sneakerheads, what was dropped in 89, the Jordan 4 Fire Reds. And so he got them for me. Now, D, the problem is I wasn't a Jordan guy.
Okay.
I loved Magic. I still love Magic. They just come off back-to-back championships. I just was a Magic guy. He had a big smile. Yeah. He looked like he enjoyed playing. Jordan always looked like pissed and angry at his teammates and just super competitive. And Magic was having a party. It was Showtime, right? So I kid you not, I was going up an escalator at the Bloomingdale's at Tyson's Corner Mall in Vienna, McLean, Virginia, and a bolt was sticking out of the escalator, and it tore through the sidewalls of my Fire Reds. And my dad and my parents took me to like the Bloomingdale's customer service, and they were like, just go buy a pair and we will reimburse you. And so we walked to the Foot Locker in the mall, and you know what I did? I pulled a onesie on it and I bought some. This might be like sacrilegious to your viewers. I used the money and I bought some purple and gold weapons to replace my OG
I get it.
Jordan 4s. And I was happy and
Yeah.
I was proud and I was back. I felt comfortable. And then I got locked into a Converse phase entirely. And I got the Magic. People might not remember Magic had his own line with Converse called the Magics. They had his signature on the side. I had Magics. And that preceded me to get LJ, the Larry Johnson Grandmama. I got the Aero flights, I think they were called, the Cons that had like the gel in the back of them.
Exactly.
I was just locking it to Converse at that point. And so I couldn't hang with Michael for too long. Now, fast forward now, years and years and years, I have tons of Jordans. I saw a social media post where Magic Johnson's wearing an Air Jordan shirt. I'm like, the apocalypse is around the corner. But nevertheless, that's my sneaker story. And that's when I first fell in love with sneakers and the culture, basketball, and the personality. So there you have it. That's my sneaker story.
So what do you think? I mean, that's an amazing story. The fact that you actually went from a Jordan 4 to a Converse weapon. I mean, talk about, it was a changing of the guard, right? At that time, 89 was such a pivotal year in the game of basketball. Like you said, the Lakers off of championships, Jordan and the Bulls trying to make their ascent. They're going up against, of course, the Detroit Pistons and things like that. But that whole campaign, do you remember the whole Converse Choose Your Weapon campaign, Magic versus Bird?
Yep, back to back, holding the shoes in the hand, right? Yep.
I wish I had my poster, because I actually had that. Even though, I had Dominique Wilkins, Jordan, Barkley, but I actually had that poster that I would have up in my wall in college. And I would, this is the days of you use fun tack to stick it to the wall because you didn't want to get hit by your, resident assistant or your hall director. So I have to find my original, but that whole campaign, I mean, and then fast forward, Converse actually took bits and pieces when they came out with their kind of a reissue of the Converse weapons. And, for me, I'm a Celtics fan. I was a Celtics fan first, kudos to my father, who was a Navyman and went from the Virgin Islands to Hawaii and ended up in Brooklyn, of all places, but he was a Celtics fan. So I had to get the black and white, the Larry Bird weapon.
Of course.
Right? So it was, Bird versus Magic. So, I mean, we can sit here and talk stories for days in terms of 1989, but what were you listening to? Do you have any, what were you listening to, cassettes? What was there a particular song that you could think of that was big in 1989?
Dang, that's a really good question. Because I love all types of music. I'm huge into music. I have a lot of vinyls. I'm into vinyls right now and just rocking like Marvin Gaye's What's Going On in Vinyl. It's just like heaven on earth from an audio perspective.
Yeah.
I'm an old school hip hop guy.
Okay.
As I was entering into college a couple of years later, Tribe Called Quest was, peaking, right? And thoughtful, conscientious hip hop is really, really key to me. But I'd have to kind of cross-reference what was popular at the time to what that's a really good question. If it was Tribe, if it was Kool Moe Dee, I mean, if it was, what was the hip hop group that was jazz? And they were only around a little bit, but they were.
It's a Sonic, maybe.
No, I'll have to look it up, but I think I had to probably be Tribe or even Hammer, MC Hammer, right? That was right there in that mix.
Right there, that sweet spot.
That's where we pray, man. I'm a praying man, so that that was right up my alley. Not only Can't Touch This, but Please Hammer Don't Hurt Him was actually the second CD I ever bought in my life. So
Hammer.
It had to be Hammer. I got to go Hammer.
Okay, all right. I mean, there was so many songs. I think of 89. I think of certainly like Public Enemy. Flavor Flav, like you said, conscious rap, where it was talking about the plight, but also this art that was supposed to be a fad that all of a sudden just kept on blossoming and growing. And groups like De La Soul, Tribe Called Quest, Common and just go on MC Light and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, MC
Yeah,
Light.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
Fear of a Black Planet. That's like I love Public Enemy. Fast forward to Harder Than You Think. That
oh,
song, that mantra, of that song, Chuck D's lyric in
yeah.
that, and just the call out from Flavor Flav about all the cities. DC's in there. I'm sure
Yeah.
Boston's in there.
Mhm.
When something's harder than you think, it's a beautiful thing. To me, that just kind of I listen to that frequently as a reminder I'm going through hard stuff. Like
Yeah,
that builds character and resiliency. And guess what? We're going to talk about it. There's some hard stuff happening.
right.
So harder than you think is a beautiful thing. Thank you, Chuck D.
Mm.
Shout out to Chuck.
Chuck D, man, for real. Yeah. Yesterday, on the 15th of January, was the anniversary for the release of Self Destruction, which was Boogie Down Productions and that whole kind of group,
Yeah.
like you said, Kumo D, Heavy
Yes.
G, of course, Dougie Fresh, MC
Yeah.
Lights in there. There's a whole Just Ice. And you think about, again, what was going on at that time, what was happening in music, culture, art, and then certainly, in the world of sneakers. Like and we've talked about this off air, like me, you're probably watching these music videos on MTV and stuff like that, but you're also paying attention to what sneakers these
100%.
artists and musicians are wearing. Like to
100%.
see, Guns N' Roses and Axl Rose, wearing a pair of like Delta Forces back in the day, or Puma Clydes, and of course Converse weapons and stuff like that. So it's amazing how, again, the world of footwear, particularly sneakers and fashion, take up a big part of our life. That's why here we are today with OSD.
It's so
So,
true, and it's a fully baked pie right now, D. So like we're at we know the outcome, but the
mm,
ingredients were just emerging then, right? The confluence of all these things were just coming together, and that's when it's the most exciting. To be honest with you, that's when it's fresh and new, and um, the Aerosmith Run DMC Speaking of
uh,
collabs, right? That collab walked this way where the two of them came together. That was another entry point for me into hip hop, right? Here was a heavy metal band or a rock band
yeah,
bringing in the godfathers of hip hop, and merging those two things
Brilliant too.
together, right? And I think a lot of that was happening. The waters were really brackish, and it was cool because all these things were happening
Mhm.
that were bringing all those elements together.
Absolutely. What's your you talked about the Converse weapon. Is that your favorite sneaker, or if you were to say, if I say, Matt, give me your top three sneakers, like what are they these days?
Yeah, I mean, all the Jordan 4, those releases are probably the most nostalgic because
Mm,
the staying power has just been phenomenal, right? And so I know people are listening to this thinking you're ridiculous. You traded in your fours for some weapons, but you're saying that in 2025. So back off, right? So it's like it's more
exactly.
like at the moment, you're right. Jordan was ascending. He hadn't even won his first championship yet. That came
Exactly.
against Magic in '91, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And so we were in that transition period, but those are just so iconic now. In the sneaker caucus we have on Capitol Hill, that's Congressman Jared Moskowitz's favorite. Jordan 4s are like his favorite, right? That's all he wears.
Ah,
And so I think those are iconic. And I do now we've had more re-releases on the weapons. I think we forgot about them for a while.
yeah.
I picked up a couple pair with some of the new drops. They even have the low top purple and golds, which are nostalgic to me. So I'd have to go with those as well. It's the nostalgia. Like there's a lot of new things that are cool. The KDs are cool. The low
Mm,
top NBA trend is weird to me, but like
okay.
KDs and the Currys and obviously LeBrons, those are all phenomenal. My daughter wears LeBrons when she plays, but they just don't speak to me like those old school ones. And that's just because it harkens back to a time when I was 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. It's like the height of life, right? In some
Exactly.
regards. So
Oh
the
man. Yeah.
innocence.
The innocence, black top courts, playing with your friends and saying, when
Yeah.
are we meeting? Like when are we gonna get this running? So
Yeah. Right.
yeah,
Exactly right.
man. If I were to come to your home right now, what sneakers are sitting by your front door?
Sneakers that are sitting by my front door are, of course, some house sneakers. I've actually have I can't remember what they're called. They're Nike house shoes. They're like super padded. They dropped a couple years ago.
Okay.
I have those. I'm an outdoorsman guy. So there's some cool things. Merrell's dropping some cool. Saucony's got some cool collabs that are out there. So I'm a big Wolverine, Merrell and Saucony guy. And so that would be by my front door. And then, you know what, it's 2025. I got some Crocs probably too, right? I'm sliding those on. Like, I'm no shame. Like, I represent all these brands, so I have no shame in any of it. But when I have to get out the door. Now, if I've got to do something, I do have a special pair of Jordans. I can't remember exactly what year they are. They're black. They've got the Hornets colorway, and they have CEO embroidered on the inside. So when Jordan ran the Hornets, he owned and ran the Hornets. They've got that on the inside of the tongue. And so those are my like executive Jordans, if you will, that I wear just to kind of keep it going. So, I got like 400 pairs of shoes. So there's plenty of options, my friend.
Plenty to pick from. Exactly.
Yeah.
Plenty to pick from, man. If you could design a collaborative sneaker, what would it look like? What would you include for you, but then also outward facing towards the consumers that you certainly know?
I've had the opportunity with the advent of kind of Nike ID or some of these other opportunities with brands to at least put a little spin on them. I've had an opportunity to do that a couple different times. I designed a couple pairs of shoes using Nike ID for myself and my wife, some matching pairs of shoes for one of our anniversaries.
Nice.
I'm a man of faith, so I was at a church in Maine, and I took a picture of a stained glass window of Jesus pulling Peter out of the Sea of Galilee. I threw those on the sidewall of some high top vans, and I freaking went to the Sea of Galilee, and I took a picture of them at the Sea of Galilee with my shoes, with Jesus at the Sea of Galilee. It was like, it was like this cool kind of reverb thing. And so I was able to do that. So I have a big picture of those hanging on my wall, and I break them out for special religious holidays.
Yeah.
And so that's been cool. There's some cool emerging brands out there. Unitas is a brand. Jonathan Isaac, who plays for the Magic, he had a certain stance on a political issue of our time, and one of his brands was like, we're done with you. And so his pastor was like, dude, just create your own brand. And he freaking went out there and did it. And so I've got a couple pairs of his shoes. I've seen him speak a couple times, and it'd be cool to do something with him. But that's the beauty of it. There's opportunity now to be your own artist. I'm close friends, as we all are, with Dr. D. Wayne Edwards, and he's done a couple cool side things for me. So anyway, it's good to know people and creative people in high places, and I've had a lot of fun doing it.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Paper Chaser is with us in the studio, and then some.
I am not worthy. I am not worthy.
Thank you for allowing me to be tardy to the Matt Priest party. I'm out on assignment, but now I'm back. Our buddy Steve Ridiculous Gordon out on assignment today. He'll be back. But Happy New Year, Matt. Happy to have you on here. We have been a long time in the making with you coming on OSD, so we're happy to have you on. And
it's good to be here.
I know D has already got you with the softball questions.
We're just talking, Coach. We were reminiscing about his Jordan 4 to Converse swap.
I'm gonna have to explain this real quick. I had Jordan 4s. I had a bolt tear through them at a Bloomingdale's in Northern Virginia. And they told me I could buy any pair I want. And I'm a Magic guy over Jordan. So I went and bought Converse weapons, purple and gold. This was 1989. And I'm sure that, again, that's sacrilegious in today's environment. But back then it was
not to us.
I was holding on to 88. I was holding on to Showtime as long as I could.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I'm still looking for an actual pair of LA Laker colored weapons from '86. I'm still looking for it. That's one of the most elusive shoes right now. A good pair, anyway.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with that over here. I mean, if you look right behind me here, you're talking about probably 4 decades of NBA shoes behind here.
Do you remember the Magic shoes? I'm not talking weapons. I'm not talking cons, but they were in like 1990, 91. They just had Magic on
the side.
Yeah, I had those too.
Yep, little earlier than that. The Magic line I actually have right up there. If you look right over my head, you see the Dr. J line there. So
Yeah.
yeah, we do history around here. We do vintage, you
Do you
know.
have the grandmama Aeroflights?
Aero Jams, yes, I
Yeah,
do.
Aero
Aero
Jam,
Jams.
that's right.
There's
Yeah.
other Aero Jams in
Soul
here.
is separating though, unfortunately.
Yep, we have Aero Jams.
I don't know what that gel is in there. I don't ask questions, but I had that gel in the back. Remember that?
Yeah, React Juice.
React juice, yeah.
React unfavorably if you touch that.
Did you hear or did any of you see the interview that Larry Johnson did on All the Smoke podcast, where he tells the story of a campaign
Yep.
that Larry Bird, Magic Johnson were involved with Converse and him.
Incredible
And
if that would have happened.
and I'll give you the short abbreviated version, Matt. It was
Okay.
basically a picture of someone on a gurney or operating table, and they're adding different. It's Magic and Bird adding different pieces, and it's got to do this. Is they adding a jump shot, a powerful blah blah blah, and adding all these ingredients.
Yeah.
And then at the end, they look at each other and they go, "So what do we call him?" Well, and Larry Bird goes to Magic, "Well, you got to call him Larry." And Magic goes, "Well, you got to call him Johnson." And then
That is unbelievable.
and then he would have, sat up from the gurney
And it was grandmama.
as grandmama Larry Johnson for this Converse, for this
That
Converse
is it,
commercial.
right? That wrote itself. That's brilliant.
Whoever came up with that and didn't greenlight that for whatever reason, they missed the boat. I'm sure they're kicking themselves in the ass.
Yeah.
Because it couldn't have played out any better. When he shared that story, I was like, talk about all-time great commercials.
That was
right?
hiding in plain view. Like that was a no duh. Like
Yeah.
I can't remember which one of the players said no to it. I think it was Larry Johnson, Larry Bird that said no to it.
sounds like a Bird no. That he's a little bit more buttoned up, I guess.
Larry was, and I have to agree with you. I bet you it was Larry, because I even heard stories about the whole Larry, and Magic Johnson, choose your weapon, on the basketball court in French Lick, Indiana.
Mhm.
Larry didn't want to do it. He's like, I'm not shooting any commercials, but Converse had already obviously cut a bunch of checks, and they're like, no, we need you to do this. Like, you guys are the face of the league.
Yeah.
Which they were. I mean, they talk about saving the NBA and taking it to the next level. I mean, the timing of it. And you watch any documentary about, the early days of the NBA, ABA, and all that stuff like that. We know like how much it changed. But Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, they changed the game truly.
They totally changed the game. And Larry Bird had a change of heart because he didn't play horse. He played horse with Michael Jordan for McDonald's, right? So that
exactly.
Remember that ad campaign?
Yeah, that was really good, man.
That was good.
Yeah, but yeah, Larry Johnson. Go figure. Larry Johnson. Yeah,
that would have been incredible.
That would have been incredible.
Missed opportunity.
That would have been incredible.
So Matt, as we switch, we could sit here and talk sneaker culture and touch points and years and commercials that are missed opportunities left and right. But as your role as CEO, FDRA, we talked, you mentioned at the top of the show, lobbyists, you're out there basically pounding the pavement.
Yeah, man. I'm lobbying for kicks.
Lobbying for kicks, brother. Talk about that. Like, what are you seeing? Like, what's in front of us right now from a retail standpoint? But then what are you looking at? Because I know you and FDRA are looking long-term as well.
Yeah. Great question. It's on the eve of the inauguration. It's on everybody's minds. And, we're an industry that's 99% imported, right? So when an American consumer goes and buys a product, 99 times out of 100 when it comes to shoes, it's going to be imported. And so with that comes import duties, and we pay $4 billion a year in import duties, which is about a $12 to $15 billion additional cost on American consumers that is paid because of those tariffs. And so we spend a lot of time advocating against tariffs and trying to make the incoming Trump administration understand that when you add costs at the border paid by American companies, it's going to drive up costs for consumers. The math is inevitable, right? So for us, there's a lot of uncertainty since the election. No matter where anyone falls politically, from a personal perspective, we kind of check that stuff at the door. We talk about trade in a partisan way, but everything else, people have their views, and we respect those views, and they have the right to them. But when it comes to trade, we're going to be anti-tariff. That's just how it boils down to the impact on an industry. And we've spent a lot of time, we've done tons of interviews, we've done polling to try to capture insights into how Trump voters think about tariffs. Now, they like tariffs, but spoiler alert, they don't like shoe tariffs. And so we put that out in the marketplace. But as the industry's advocate, we are out there trying to drive a narrative that if they go down a road with tariffs, that they're not broad-based, that they're surgical, they're tactical, and they're focused in on national security items, for example. So we'll all find out very soon what the plan is. There's a lot of rumor, but it looks like there'll be some kind of broad-based tariffs, particularly on goods from China, up, anywhere from 10% upwards. And we just are trying to figure out the timing for that. And then our members are trying to figure out, okay, what do I do on the costing side? And when does that hit the consumer at retail?
Right. And it's no serendipitous play on why we have you on at this particular time.
Right.
With the incoming administration about to transition. This is the second time you're going through this.
It is.
Right? This is the second time. And I think one of the things that is sort of a difference maker this time over last time in terms of the retail landscape is consumer behaviors have changed.
Yes.
And it has affected brick and mortar, right?
Yeah.
So what are you hearing, and what is the feedback? What has the feedback been from your members in terms of how this is going to really hurt more now, as opposed to in the first Trump administration, where sneaker prices went up 15, 20, 25% in some cases?
Yeah, it's a great question, Sean. I mean, look, the biggest change is the consumer behavior, to your point, but it's also consumer mentality. The consumer is now just beaten down by inflation. It's not just on sneakers, it's across the board, right? I don't have to tell you guys, eggs and t-shirts and vacations and flights, everything is more expensive. When the guy comes and fixes your water heater, more expensive. So we are now in this environment where, at least from most political observers, the president won because of the kind of the frustration with inflation. And so our messaging is like, look, you might have gotten away with it the first time around because we had been in about 12 years of deflationary activity, meaning prices had not gone up, they'd come down in some regard, and we really had no inflation. But that was then. This is now. It's like a totally new lifetime in the sense that costs have gone up across the board, and they've been compounded. Right? It might be a 2 or 3% or 4 or 5% a year, but year after year after year, you're right, Sean. That's 20, 25% on products, and they better tread lightly. Like we're telling them, like, we want to help you tamp down inflation. Let's not raise prices on people. That's like the antithesis of inflation. And I think that I think they're sensitive to that, but they're going to try some things. And I think there's some political downsides to how sensitive now and how awake consumers are to the impact of inflation on their bottom lines.
Yeah, I think that considering, like you said, everything's gone up, right?
Yeah.
Give me a second to play Tariffs for Dummies.
Okay.
And explain exactly how, within this sense, people are going to be affected.
Let's do it. Tariffs for Dummies 101. All right. So sneakers typically, for the most part, have a 20% duty on them, no matter where they come from. We have a couple free trade agreements with like Mexico, but we're all the sneaker producing countries, Vietnam being the top one, Indonesia number 2, China number 3. China's our top supplier of all footwear, but let's talk sneakers. So a shoe is shipped to you. It's a $20. It's shipped into the U.S., brought in by an American company. Let's say it's $20, what we call FOB, freight on board. That's the price it costs when it hits the border at the U.S. border. Let's say there's a 20% tariff on it. That's $4 that's tacked on that. So let's just say that 20 becomes 24, 25 for argument's sake. That $25 shoe is then sold by the wholesaler to the retailer for about 50-ish. So you're doubling at that point. That $5 is $10 then. That's a $10 additional cost because of the tariff that's baked into that. The retailer then turns around. All this is super general math, but gives people an idea of the vibe of it.
Yep.
That retailer turns around and sells that shoe for $100.
Right.
So that $10 shoe is now that's additional $20 on top of the shoe. That one pair of shoes, just because of the tariff, it's baked into the cost of goods as it makes a way as it passes from hand to hand, because everyone's trying to maintain their margins to be profitable and stay in business.
Right.
So you can see how very quickly these costs are compounded. And that's the real world impact. And because we have a hyper competitive industry, the moment you take that out of the equation, you're going to see a lot more competition on pricing just to drive those down. And now a lot of the sneakers that we buy, the FOB is higher than $20. So, you can ramp that up a little bit more, but it gives you the general sense of how the tariff works.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Let's go super nerdy now.
Let's do it.
Right.
That's my middle name. That's what my kids call me.
Let's go supply chain.
Okay.
How is supply chain now, in addition to that, changing how this whole thing runs? Because, and the reason why I asked that is because we're now finally out of the cycle where the sneaker companies were using supply chain as the excuse.
Yeah.
Right. We've sort of finally, in a sense, caught up in terms of the inventory that was delayed because of COVID.
Right.
Which a lot of brands got stuck moving, late inventory.
Yeah.
I think we're out of that now. So now with this being current, how's supply chain coming into effect with this as well?
Yeah. So, all right. So I'm gonna challenge one of your notions, and that is like we're done with the inventory glut. We have a quarterly inventory tracker, so we take all the publicly traded footwear companies' inventory numbers that they report out, and we aggregate them together, and then we put out a tracker to our members.
Nice.
We just published it a week ago, and through the fourth quarter, and while inventory levels have come down from the peaks of COVID, they're still historically high right now. So a lot of companies, and we've heard some of our biggest brands that we're fans of talk about, they're trying to still get rid of inventory. Okay. So we still have these elevated inventory positions that we're working through. But to answer your broader question, Sean, look, when I got this job in 2009, we were, from a volume perspective, 78% of all pairs of footwear brought into the U.S. were made in China, with about 76% of that was the value. So China was 87% of pairs, 76% of value. That number now is 58% of pairs and 35% of value out of China. Vietnam is 35% of value. It just shows you that they have higher quality goods they're shipping us. So we've been trying to diversify out of China for a long time, but footwear is not like t-shirts. T-shirts can pick up like the Baltimore Colts and move overnight, and no one's like, they're just out. Like they're heading to Indy, and you're like, what happened? Footwear is capital intensive, it's labor intensive, and it takes a long time to build up the manufacturing capabilities, whether if you're moving from one country to the next, and that just takes time. So we say we're diversifying, but we're still kind of shifting chairs amongst three different countries: China, Vietnam, and Indo. And Vietnam's captured most of the sneaker market share. Majority of sneakers sold in the U.S. are made in Vietnam at this point. But this does challenge supply chain. So let's say that the Trump administration increases tariffs on Chinese goods. Let's say it's 10%, like they've talked about. The president talked about that in November. That's not going to be enough to push people into Vietnam, because guess what? Vietnam's very aware of this. They understand there's going to be increased demand. There's going to be limited capacity. Guess what happens to prices? By that point, you're like, I'm just going to stay in China and pay the 10%. So these things aren't done in a vacuum. There's tons of different variables that go into it. And the supply chain, as agile as we wish it was, is not agile enough. And it can't always account for all these different variables. And so people just kind of stick where they are as long as they are.
And are they just baking, like you said earlier, baking the cost into the wholesale price or FOB price. Is that what they're doing?
What typically happens is, let's say again, it's 10%.
Mm-hmm.
It will be shared across the supply chain. The consumer will take a bit, so they'll see a hit. The wholesale, the brand will hold on to some of that, and then they'll go to the factory and turn around and say, "Hey, help us out here on the pricing to absorb this." Now, the president has indicated upwards of 60% on Chinese goods. So once that, it's like game over after that. You're going to have to leave China. You can't. You're going to push a lot of that to the consumer. You can't absorb that. You'll go bankrupt. So it all comes down to what is the number. Show me the number, and that's what we're waiting for, so that we can start planning. Business hates bad news, but it hates uncertainty worse, because it can plan for bad things, but you can't plan for things you don't know what's going to happen. And we're caught in that right now, and that's one of the biggest frustrations that we have as an industry.
So would you say there's a lot of anxiety on the part of the companies, but also with supply and demand too? Is there a lot of anxiety? I mean, you're sitting again in a role as CEO of FDRA, like you're right in the middle. You're straddling these, touch points.
Yeah, I am. I found sometimes feels like two icebergs drifting apart in separate ways as I do the splits. But nevertheless, it is. I will say, if this was 2016 and 2017, the anxiety level would be higher. We have a lot of wisdom now, and a lot. We talked about harder than you think is a beautiful thing. Public Enemy, Chuck D. Harder than we've thought has been a beautiful thing, from building up wisdom and agility and patience. So I wouldn't say anxiety is like more elevated than it has been in the past, because of what we've been through together as an industry. We've learned a lot, and we've never been more relevant. Not to kind of toot our own horn, but more and more people are on our calls. We're doing executive briefings every day. We're on TV. We're doing all these things because the industry. We're trying to make sure the industry has all the information it has. While at the same time, they've seen this movie before. The sequel they know is going to be disruptive, and I think a lot of people are in the moods like, I can't react to every tweet or truth post. I've just got to sit back, see what happens. Once the number's announced and the date and the timeline, then I can start to make decisions to hedge bets, increase prices, shift sourcing, or just stay put.
Right. So another thing different this time from when you went through this the first time. Let me know what your members are saying about this, and even how you personally feel.
Sure.
There are two emerging markets that are trying to bubble up from under the ground. The first is India. The second is made in the USA. What are you hearing on both of those fronts?
Oh, I love both these topics. They're both interesting, but also challenged in their own specific ways. Let's start with India, Sean. So India is amazing on paper. Like, if you had to put a sourcing opportunity country on paper with a young workforce, a growing population, similar language, like shared language, shared cultural, democratic system kind of stuff, you're like, this is it. No Chinese Communist Party, no Chinese, no forced labor, so on and so forth. But the challenge with India has always been the bureaucratic kind of response, and the delivery times, and the availability of just the Chinese have this mentality, like, get it done, get it over, we're going to get this done and get it to you. And they just do it. And they're so good at it. And India, God bless them, they have some challenges, but we've seen investment in India recently from Pao Chen, one of the big athletic footwear suppliers out of Taiwan.
Yeah.
Walmart sourcing more from India. My 77 Blazers were made in India. When I bought them, I was like, that was a surprise to me. I always look at the country of origin. I'm sure you guys do too.
Yeah.
So I think there is some things happening there, but it takes a while to get organized. And I don't know if it's a thing yet. Is this more dabbling, or is this a long-term trend? Let's pivot to Made in America. Made in America, as much as I would love to be waving the flag like Sergeant Slaughter and saluting, I'm dropping all these old school references.
I'm telling you. Talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
Hold on, let's give Matt a second to go get his WWF.
I'm telling you, get the belt. He's like put on his shoulder, like,
Go get your WWF lunchbox, Matt. We'll wait.
I got it in my thermos to boot.
Man.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, so as much as I would love to be patriotic, I'm always the buzzkill in this conversation because we import in 2.5 billion pairs of shoes. That's over 7 pairs of shoes for every single person in this country every single year. And so to think about the necessary capacity, labor needed to produce that volume at the prices that are competitive for the American consumer is just difficult to conceptualize, right? We have a number of companies. Our viewers will think back and remember the Atlanta Adidas Speed Factory.
Yeah.
Remember Lighthouse in Baltimore, the Under Armour. Remember some of these other initiatives. They're all shuttered because it's hard to get the materials, hard to get the workers, and hard to find the demand for the shoes that are produced at the prices that are elevated because of the U.S. labor component. And so it's just not going to be a solution. We're an advanced economy. We've matured out of footwear. China would love to mature out of footwear. That means they're making more automobiles and airplanes and tech. We make more than U.S. we've ever made in our history. You won't hear that politically, but we just do it with less people. And so the challenge, I think, is it will continue to be niche. It will continue to have champions like New Balance who really push it forward, and God bless them, rightfully so. But my problem is you're going to go as a government and ask working families, because working families pay higher percentage of duties on footwear than those of us who are buying sneakers or leather loafers out of Italy. And you're asking them to subsidize establishing production in the U.S. Like, you thought your goods weren't expensive enough. You're going to have to help pay to special interests to prop up domestic footwear manufacturing to make it work here. And guess what? It's probably not even still going to work. So
here's a devil's advocate question for you on that, considering what we already know exists here. Right?
Yeah.
You have places like Garrickson in Philly.
Yes.
You got New Balance doing what they do. You have Factory in LA, La La Land in LA.
Yep.
There's a few who are already here, right? Yeah. And what if America approached bolstering their capabilities the same way in World War I and II, companies were subsidized to bolster production to go to war?
Right. Yeah. And that's a viewpoint that's out there. I think you'll find there's commonality with the incoming administration with that view. And I don't disagree to the point, Sean, where I think we have been subsidizing that because we have high tariffs to help protect the establishment of those types of entities here in the U.S., or they're done with little labor components and they're innovators. And so in all honesty, they have the space to innovate. They have the mind. I know most of the people run those organizations. They're phenomenal people. I applaud them. In fact, we represent a majority of domestic footwear manufacturers. So it's not an either or for us, but for us, it's also, how much more can you tax your people with tariffs to help prop all that up? I don't know. I mean, is $4 billion enough? Should we go to 10 billion? Should we funnel that directly to those companies as a subsidy? I don't think that's the right answer to it. I think they need to continue to compete, and the consumer will respond, and we'll see. And New Balance is a part of their brand identity, right? That might even be a loss leader for them, for all we know, because they import more shoes from Vietnam than anywhere else in the world, and they do so effectively. So it's an ongoing debate, and I love that we can have it here at OSD. Because it sharpens me, because we're going to have it continuously over the next 4 years for sure.
And then the other thing is, where's the tipping point with the language around sustainability? Right. That's the other thing to consider, is at what point does, like overseas now, what is it called? ESG and, all the other rules and regulations that are now being forced upon companies and countries and cities on a whole to make things more sustainable. Where's the tipping point where we can no longer do that and manufacture over there, because it's not really balancing out just like how you said, it becomes a loss leader at some point, and I think that's part of, what a lot of people are saying doesn't make sustainability worth it. Where's our tipping point with that, where we can, for whatever reason, bring more back to the States?
Yeah, I agree. I'm all for it. I really believe in the market, and I believe in capitalism. I believe in a people's, the collective wisdom of a people to make choices based on their purchasing power, etc. Sustainability is like it's just a beast. We have a whole website, shoesustainability.com, where we're tracking this. We have a whole portion of it that t-shirts aren't shoes, because what we find, Sean, is that in the European market, even in California and New York, they're trying to regulate a t-shirt similar to a pair of Jordans. And that's just, they're different products, and it shouldn't.
I remember you shining the light on that in terms of, it was a really serious issue that, thank you for fighting for that. It was a really serious issue in that, at what point is too much, and at what point does a change need to happen in the industry overall, right? And I think, for anyone who hasn't seen the Netflix documentary By Now, which I'm sure you have, it talks a lot about, what the challenges are and what the brutal truth is about the stuff we are buying and consuming, right? And for us sneakerheads, we already, I hate to use that term, but for those out there who are going to watch this, because you're going to bring us like 1 million viewers.
Now you're lying. Now you're
Listen, so for us sneakerheads, we've already been aware of, at some point, between D and myself, there's probably over 10,000 pairs of sneakers over 40 years.
Yeah.
Right? Now, imagine the amount of toxins and all of these chemicals and things that we've harbored and kept around us all these years, right? Which is now being talked about in terms of how fast fashion has things coming in and going out. But those of us in America weren't even aware of where they were going. They were going shipped overseas and dumped in the Amazon and all these other places.
Africa, yep.
All of that is starting to come to light. And people are starting to have now conversations around, like, I had a sustainability teacher here for one of the programs we're running here at the Academy. And she put something out to the kids and, even us adults in the room, called the 30 Wear Challenge. Meaning, before you buy it, ask yourself, will you wear this 30 times or more? Right? And when you reach that point where you have a bar for whether you are going to purchase a new pair of shoes or a t-shirt or a pair of jeans or not, does that help or hurt based on where you are with the challenges these days?
Yeah, I love that challenge. I may not apply. I may give an exemption to footwear, but I may apply to other things in my life, because but I mean, think about it. Think about just the tech industry, right? We have this piece of machinery that runs our lives, and they have freaking built-in obsolescence into it, where you have to get it. I don't know, it's $1,000. Let's just say you have to get it like every year or every other year at a minute. It's how, and we all we live and die by it. And there's this whole mentality. And I keep thinking, like, we're doing all the sustainability work, and maybe I'm being too forthright, but to your point on the buy now thing, it's like, if we were talking sustainability in 1989, the pivotal year that we all, not Taylor Swift's 1989, but 1989 when Jordan 4s were dropped, right? Then that's one thing, because we didn't have e-com. We didn't have, I bought a pencil and they put it in a box and shipped it to me direct, right? But now it's like the volume and the movement of goods. You're just chipping away. It's small incremental changes, even if you're putting a biomaterial in an upper or whatever it is. So we're consuming people, and we have to look in the mirror and say, how much consumption is too much? And I'm not the one to do that, because we want to sell more shoes, obviously, but it's a legitimate question we should ask ourselves culturally.
Yeah. I want to double back on something real quickly. When you're talking about the made in USA and not. Particularly though, like the lost art of, or the skilled labor.
Yes.
We don't have the skilled labor in the United States anymore. Like, it doesn't exist here. Like, how many shoe cobblers do you see still in existence in this day and age?
Right.
Yes, there are sneaker restoration companies, love what they're doing, but they're few and far between.
Yeah. No, you're right.
But those skills, like those days where, like, when there was, like, I'm dating myself, where there was home economics, there was Shop, there was
Yep.
HVAC, and all those other programs. One of the programs that I saw, particularly at a school in Brooklyn, New York, was basically shoe repair, right?
Really? That's cool.
Yeah, it doesn't exist anymore, though.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, this is in the late 80s. It doesn't exist anymore. So the skilled labor isn't there. So again, how would we, increase made in the USA if we don't even have the labor and obviously the cost? It doesn't, they don't add up.
Yeah, no, it's so true. Now your shop teacher had one arm, and that's a concern. But beyond that, there's been a number of companies in my tenure at FDRA that have attempted to do some domestic production.
Yeah.
I'll kind of keep names to a minimum here, but there was a big retailer announced a big initiative. This was a decade ago, and a company said, "Hey, look, we're going to prop up and make, a Crocs type of shoe here in the U.S., and we're going to do it in a factory in the Southeast." And it's 200 jobs in a small town in the Southeast, and they couldn't fill the jobs. And that's a low skill shoe construction, right? We're not talking like tons of touches, but it still was difficult to find people willing to even learn those skills. So again, economies mature. I mean, there's a maturation process. The Chinese would love to be the United States from an economic powerhouse perspective because we've moved out of this, this mass production, manufacturing industrial complex that dominates every job, and we're in the services and in the knowledge space, and we still make a ton of stuff here, and that's not you can't go around politically and say that for whatever reason, but we've matured out of it. And the Chinese call footwear production a sunset industry. They hope the sun someday sets on it and they move up the value chain. But so anything that moves back here is going to have to rely on innovation. The Made in Old Town project in Portland's really cool. I've toured there, and Elias and those guys. But there's going to be some really innovative minds that think through it. And it's not going to look like your grandfather's footwear factory for sure.
Yeah, and it's going to happen in the vein that is happening now in terms of 4-year college enrollment going down and trade school enrollment going up.
Yes,
which is something that even us here with our social studies initiative, we're in tune with.
Yeah.
Because we see that Gen Z, the core consumer for footwear right now, is not trying to get a 4-year degree and a $200,000 student loan.
Right.
They literally look at us and say, that was your generation.
Yeah. Y'all fell for the okie doke.
Fell for the banana in the tailpipe. We want to get to the bag faster. And I think that's where the gift and the curse of social media can help and hurt at the same time, is because, there's rose-colored glasses being put on for, what it means to be successful and reach a pinnacle of industry. But that also got their minds thinking about the things that we know are wrong with what's happening with education and economic empowerment.
Right.
Even the people who we rely on, the heart surgeons, the scientists, everybody, they're still paying student loans.
They are. I know.
And they know that. And they're like, not us.
Right.
And that's why trade school enrollment is going up, because the trade school model is learn, hands-on, apprenticeship, get to your bag, which is exactly what they want. And I think that that's the kind of spirit and movement with which our footwear industry and people who are qualified for it is going to be changed into the direction that we're all talking about.
Yeah,
I agree with that. That's a great point, because and I've hired a number of millennials over the last few years, and they all have side hustles, right? They all have 2 or 3 other things they're doing because they have this e-com business on the side, or they do this thing. And I'm always to me, it's this entrepreneurial spirit that has always been there, but it's just kind of what's the right word? It's kind of communicating in a way, expressing itself in a totally different way with this generation. And so I'm actually encouraged. I don't mind deconstructing a few things along the way and enhancing them, and creating competition in the knowledge space for a 4-year college degree so that they can improve on their side as well. Because I have a liberal arts degree. I'm political science from NC State University. Go Wolfpack. And I love it. I'm super grateful for it. It's got me a long way. I'm at this job, but it's not right for everybody. I mean, and it's not, you're not only successful if you go get the 4-year degree. And I'm glad there's like the stigma of that is being dismantled because it is a knowledge economy and you can go find knowledge anywhere at this point. It's right, as we said, right here.
Right, exactly. And I think those are the contributing factors to the change that needs to happen in order for people to want to jump back into things and not see trade as a failure or not being able to make it to, the secondary education level to make a living. Like
Right.
that's the stigma that has lasted for so long. And Gen Z now all of a sudden is like, oh no, y'all are crazy for doing that. Y'all were bugging. You owe how much? And I think that those are the factors that we need to sort of celebrate now that the Gen Z consumer can then become the Gen Z professional. And that's what we believe in with what we're doing.
Yeah.
Is that Gen Z consumer needs to be the Gen Z professional in our industry.
Yeah.
And they're going to want to do it differently than what we see and what we're actually talking about right now.
Yeah, I agree. Amen to that.
Man.
So what does we know what next week looks like?
Right. Do we? I don't know.
Well, I mean for you, your work. We know what battles you have ahead for next week.
Sure.
Right. But what does 2025 look like for you, the FDRA, and your members, which we need to become, full disclosure?
Oh no, it's honorary. Speaking of honor, an honorary degree, if you will, honorary membership.
What does 2025 look like for yourself, the team, and some of the things that you want to put forward for your members?
Yeah, great. I love that question, and I'm an optimistic guy. The good Lord has kind of made me this optimistic dude, and sometimes I'm a little naive about things, which is good. But I'm bullish about it. I'm optimistic about it. I think it's going to be a roller coaster. But I've told our team the day after the election, we have a variety of different political perspectives within the ranks of FDRA, and as we were talking through what the impact would be on us, we were built for this. Like, we've been preparing for the different outcomes and the different technical aspects of what may or may not happen on the trade front. We have the expertise. We've been in these positions before. We worked in White Houses. We worked on Capitol Hill. We worked in the industry, and we know how to communicate well. We've done a lot of communication. We've honed the way we communicate and thought critically about that. So like, now's the time to shine. So I actually fully expect we'll have a growth year as far as membership's concerned, as far as engagement. We have a weekly member call. 150 companies and brands get on that every week. We've been doing it for 5 years, and it's like never been hotter, if you will, as far as interest. And I think with these challenges come opportunities to shine and come opportunities to prove our worth. We do not take lightly in the investment that comes into the organization from our member companies. And so we want to make them proud. We want them to feel like even in a tight time, we're invaluable, and they cannot cut the membership dues, even if they're trimming elsewhere. And so I think we're well positioned for such a time as this, and we'll continue to do great things. There are a lot of other things outside the trade space we do. We do a lot of data and analysis. We're co-founders of the Black Footwear Forum, which you guys are intimately involved in. I'm super proud of that. When I'm done with this job, or as I'm on my deathbed, it'll be one of the top 5 things in my life that I'm most proud of, and joining forces with Dwayne and coming up with this idea that we would bring Black employees together in the industry. And I thought we were going to do like a one-off event in February 2019 in D.C. And Dwayne was like, no, we're going to have 4 events over 4 or 5 days, and it's going to become a movement. And he was wrong, and I was right. And now we have hundreds and hundreds of Black employees that are engaging in different regional chapters in Boston, and New York, and Atlanta, and Columbus, and Portland, just to name a few. And we have the national event, and so I'm super excited about that. And then
we also have the event that we're partners with you guys on. We work with you guys on Shoes for a Cure every year.
Shoes for a Cure, the breast cancer research initiative. Sean is slinging Timberlands on the floor there, and Chelsea Market in New York. I didn't know this, Sean, but Chelsea Market is where the Oreo cookie was invented. Who knew? It's like sacred land. And you're right. I love this industry, and the story of me and my Jordan 4s and my weapons as a 12-year-old in the 80s.
Yeah.
The fact that I get to do this as a job, I'm super blessed. And so it's my 17th year in this job, and I'm excited about it. And I feel like I'm just getting started in a lot of ways. So
half your life already.
I wish.
Man, oh man.
And don't forget your WWF lunchbox.
I'm packing, a sandwich and a fruit roll up and a juice box. I'll be ready to go.
Oh man. You're firing on all cylinders, and listen to a little Public Enemy in your heads, in your Walkman. You'd be all set.
Right. That's 911. 911's a joke, man. 911 is a joke. That's not a public service announcement.
D, I don't know if you know this, but you and Matt share the same passion for a Tribe Called Quest. I don't know if he ever shared that with you.
We talked about it.
We certainly did. Yeah. And
he is hard-bodied ATCQ. So
what I love about hip hop, and so let me just again, bear a little bit more of my heart. I like music. I don't like vulgar music per se, whether it's rock or hip hop or country or whatever.
Right.
And so that's why I gravitate towards old school rap, and I gravitate towards conscientious rap, because you can pack so much knowledge, wisdom, theology. Some great Christian hip hop artists out there that you listen to a song and you're like, oh my gosh, I must have read like a 500-page book with that 1 3-minute track. And then you pivot over to a rock song about, Here Comes the Sun. Great song, but it feels fluff after I've been listening to hip hop. Right? That's why I love hip hop. You can it's jam packed with vitamins and minerals for edification. So there you go.
Everything.
We are definitely tied to it. From a very long time.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, just to take that journey in hip hop, both of us, D and I, growing up where we grew up, mixtape cassettes being shipped overseas, and sitting at your boombox recording late nights and all of the things, and even a lot of the people who are responsible for those movements that we work with today. And to think about the journey of where we've gone in the footwear industry, growing up with sneakers as part of the hip hop uniform, to where we are now, 17 years of OSD, 14 years of social studies. And then to sit here with you and have conversations like this, 2025, talking about an incoming administration and how this is affecting pricing and, consumer behavior and stuff. These are those kind of like flashpoints and highlight reels of all of our lives.
Yeah, right.
All with footwear. This is an incredible, episode for us to really have this flashpoint of where we are with this. December 28th, I turned 40 years old. That was my 40th year in sneakers. I turned 53. So that was December 28th, I turned 53. This is my 40th year in sneakers.
Yeah. Wow. That's unbelievable. Congratulations. Happy sneaker birthday.
Yeah.
Well, you think about all of this, and Matt, thanks for bearing your soul and then some.
Yeah, man.
There's so much that people, always, want to hear from, other people, especially want to hear the stories, the memories about music, certainly about sneakers. But the way that you were able to do it, and you're able to navigate, you go from wearing, I love when I see photos of you in your suit, and then I love the full body shot, and you're wearing your sneakers, and I'm like, yep, there it is. Like that's the period, right? It's not a comma, it's the period. It's like it brings it all home, which again, it speaks to who you are, where you come from, what you're about, but also don't judge a book by its cover. But when people see you wearing fresh kicks, that already puts you into like, okay, I could talk to him. Maybe it is a head nod, maybe it's a point, and it's a conversation starter, and then who knows where this beautiful conversation may go.
Yeah, I appreciate that, D. I get so many people thinking like they don't see me in a tie, and like, I've never seen you not in a tie. And I'm like, do you think I'm some square accountant? Like, I've been, and I'm not just a poser. I've been into sneakers all my life, essentially. So, So again, why I was so excited to do this one, I never thought I was cool enough to do it, and I'm glad you allowed me to come on.
That's the second time you said that.
I know. And maybe the third, I may have probably said free game. And then secondly is the fact that I've been into sneakers a long time, and so I want to always have the opportunity to talk about it. Some of my knowledge and my experiences and my weapons, God bless my weapons wherever they might be, and just cut it with you guys. It's fun. I love you guys, and I love hanging out with you and being a part of this industry because I've got all these cool friends doing some really cool things, and you guys are top of the list.
Well, we got to thank you for coming back on one of the return episodes. You know, we're 3 or 4 deep now into our return after years of people asking us to return.
Yeah.
And you know, you will go down as one of those episodes again that people who watch OSD, our disorderlies, as we call them, you will go down as one of those episodes where after people watch it, they will feel a bit smarter.
Yes.
You know, and that's one of the things that we really like about having folks like yourself on. There's, you know, the folks we have come on and, you know, their confirmation and signifiers for how we all feel on a daily.
Sure.
You know, people who come on who are just as passionate as you and I, you know, being able to share such a high level conversation and level of importance for this thing that we lace up every day.
Right.
Those are monumental episodes for us. We got to thank you for coming on and be able to do that with us.
Oh man, my pleasure. We're to the viewers, we all know each other off camera. We're friends, and to break bread like this on a topic and have some fun doing it, and a lot of reminiscing. I think we're all kind of similar age, so it was fun to kind of think through the memories of all the different cultural aspects of sneakers. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, and thank you for being the one that brought the hair to the episode.
I know, right?
Yeah, you know, that was the one reason I wanted to come on. I need to have some hair on this episode.
Yeah.
Matt, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for being our guest on the show.
My pleasure.
Yes.
And as always, man, you know, we know it won't be your first or last time as a guest on the show. So the door is always open, the table's always set, and we're always going to sit down and break bread and have great conversations like we did today. So we thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you guys. Really appreciate it.